Welcome to What the Decks, where over the course of a lunch hour, we take the idea for a deck build from Lunchbox to Deckbox. I'm your host, Skylar, and today we're tackling Starblood Stalkers plus Malevolent Masks. Stalkers in particular being requested here by viewer and Discord user Travisor. So thank you a ton for reaching out and tossing a build that you want to see done out my way. It's greatly appreciated. Starblood Stalkers is a warband that I've always wanted to spend some time with. They're dinosaurs, and I mean, what's not to love about that? And then you just start like looking at all of the interesting layers that what's the greater faction called in AOS, but that are brought to the table there. With this kind of almost like Egyptian technology, like ancient like temples plus technology plus the stars themselves, all mixed into dinosaurs. And I guess maybe more like less Egyptian and more like Mayan or Aztec is kind of where you get some of that iconography or the visuals that are present in the skinks in general. But yeah, I've always wanted to play the dinosaur warband that gets to hold and has a bouncer up front. So this is my chance, and I'm excited. But before we get there, first we have an exciting field report to tackle. So last fresh build on the show was Seraphon. Thank you, Squirrel. Seraphon is the AOS faction there. They will always just be the lizard men to Wellner know. Seraphon works. Dinosaurs work even better. Lizards feels like a step down. Excuse me. But all right, field report, and in particular the Bloodthirsty hosts. This might be the most amount of games I've played for a field report with a warband. Turns out that I just happened to have some stars aligned that way, where not only was I really like enjoying the pairing and the puzzle and like still trying to like really wrap my head around Hungary and Parasite, but I happen to also have the time. So let's dive into it. So first thing we'll talk about, just there were 9 games played. There were 5 wins and 4 losses. And what we got to play was Rippas. That was Rivals Rippas versus the full package from us, the full Bloodthirsties hosts build. So, not quite on the same level there. And then also we got to play against Exiled Dead with Malevolent Masks. Wellner. Kanan with Hungry and Parasite. Shout out to my local Jake. And Rippas, shout out to Daniel as well. Especially like when I sat down, I was like, "Oh, Rivals, okay, I'll grab something different." And she's like, "No, play that." And I was like, "All right, here we go." Thorns with Rhyme Locked Relics. So that was actually with Jake. Jake was the individual that requested the Crimson Court plus Hungry and Parasite build. So it was awesome to be able to grab games with him. Not just so that we could explore the build together and talk about it together, but also he has been actively exploring the build ever since the episode. So in fact, prior to the episode, he gave the build a go himself, and I held that list in secret. I didn't look at it ahead of time, and so afterwards it was really cool to compare notes. We had vast differences in cards across our build, and I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. So we also got to play against Kagra's Fearsome Fortress. That was Alex. Anytime you hear Kagra's, you can probably assume it was against Alex. And Dreppers with Breakneck Slaughter. And that was against Kaylin, also another viewer of the show. So a lot there. There were 2 games against Thorns because there was a best of 3, and 3 games against Drapers because that was a best of 3. So what does that all equal? How can we take a look at the warbands played, how we performed against them, and what can we discern from this? So I went up against 4 games of Elite Aggro. That's going to be our Rippas game and our Drapers breakneck slaughter game. So against elite aggro, we went 2-2. We went about 50-50. And I think against two game plans that are going to be heavily dice dependent, um, sometimes it's going to come down to that. It's one of the reasons why I don't always love aggro, and I love some of the flexibility in this build, some of the passive ways that we can score, some of the ways that we don't need to necessarily rely on aggro. But Crimson Court hit like trucks. Turns out, so do Drapers. Something I knew, something that Bobby makes sure that I never forget, and I've never seen them tuned up to 11 with Breakneck Slaughter. So that was quite the interesting challenge. Both of the losses, at least one of the losses, felt really close. It was 3 games back to back, so they're kind of blurring together a little bit. A lot of fun there. So elite aggro, we can hold our own, is kind of what I would say there. And then Exiled Dead, I classify that Malevolent Mass pairing as kind of how do we do against Horde Puzzle. Well, Horde Puzzle, or anytime you hear me refer to a game plan as puzzle, which might be something I start doing going forward, it's about how you can solve the puzzle on the fly. And I only had 1 game into it with the Bloodthirsty host, so not enough data. It was really close, and I lost it. So we couldn't keep up with the scoring potential of that puzzle, but almost. I think if I had a chance to get some scything off with success on Velis, it would have been a completely different game. In fact, I think we ended up figuring out that it came down to 1 dice roll was the difference of that game, and Velis had gone in for a major scything attack against 3 targets and only took 1 of them successfully. Didn't even land damage on the other 2. Kanan, that was an aggro puzzle, because that was with Hungarian Parasite. We're both filling out Hungarian Parasite. It's interesting, when you're up against it, how you need to, how many cards interact with yours specifically, as well as theirs. So that's just kind of an interesting puzzle. We were able to take that. But that one really kind of came down to aggro, I think. But what I really want to talk about, Elite Flex, that was Kagra's. I did lose that one, but again, close. So in all of these games, we're holding the game to the wire, and that's a cool takeaway. And then Thorns was our only hold horde experiment, and we took that one 2-0. And what I want to talk about here is I think that they're always going to do really well against horde in general. It's why we were able to hold Exiled Dead down to 1 attack there. It's because you can threaten 2-3 damage, and so you can threaten just farming, their fighters. But against Thorns in particular, I learned a very interesting lesson, and that is that Hungering Parasite, I think on its own, is a strong counter to Thorns. And how that works is Thorns wants to inspire to get access to their double dodge. Well, Thorns, in order to inspire, they have to start their turn next to one of yours. So they're pushing into these positions, arranging themselves in these positions ahead of their turn so that they're adjacent to you, so that they can then inspire. Well, they're creating these adjacencies, which means if you can break your parasite, and we have plenty of tools to do so, then you can hand the parasite over to them either before they inspire, or if you have multiple options because multiple adjacencies have been formed, you can wait and then hand it off to somebody who is inspired, and that will help you as well. Being able to hand it over to an enemy that's inspired, that can help score, I believe, Thwarted Destiny. So that's interesting. Just bringing the Thorns Warband down to a position where if they're going to be inspiring, they have to be really careful and intentional about it and find ways to pull away from you, or risk the parasite, and then they're down to 1 dodge with a reroll against them. So I thought that was really interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about the build specifically. So we had some hard objectives in here. We had Temporary Reprieve was the hardest objective. I disliked it strongly, and I'm going to recommend getting rid of it. Score this immediately after an activation step in which your warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade was broken. So when we did this build, I mentioned that this was going to be hard. The only way to score this is either for the Bane of Heroes fighter to die during an activation, or for Opportunistic Leech to trigger during an activation and remove the parasite. So we're taxed Opportunistic Leech just by bringing Temporary Reprieve. And I had mentioned we had like 18 Gambits, and we whittled it down to 15, and then it was hard from there to whittle it down further. So to be taxed this slot is really not what we want, right? It puts more stress on what we could be bringing to the Gambits than I would like. It wasn't like we had room for this anyways. So in replace of Temporary Reprieve, I'll kind of just jump to the swap for this one. Superlative Skill. So that is right here. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action that takes the target out of action if the attack roll contains only successes. So you're pretty accurate. You're looking for hammers most of the time anyways, but you also get rerolls. So the attack roll on a kill contain only successes. You've got pretty decent probability, given the fact that rerolls are involved, to hit this, or that friendly fighter has no wound counters and no hunger counters. And this is where I found that it would score more often than not, because there's a lot of healing in this deck, and if you drink from the fighter that you just killed, so if you killed them adjacent, then you'll meet the qualifications here. So we did bring in a Kill Surge instead of Temporary Reprieve, because this is kind of a Kill Surge, but like, you don't want to be the one dying, and it's difficult to get it passed off and then take that target down specifically. And like, if you draw into Opportunistic Leech, do you use it, or do you wait for a chance to see Temporary Reprieve? It's an awkward relationship with your deck. So remove Temporary Reprieve, toss in Superlative Skill. Definitely my recommendation. That frees up Opportunistic Leech, so we can get rid of this, and we can put in the Curse Hungers. Now, one of the other hardest objectives was Driven by the Curse. Score this immediately after an activation step in which the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade made a successful attack action. I was surprised how often this bit me. How often I would try to make attacks, and even with the reroll, I couldn't get a successful attack in. And then I might be in a position where I had to charge to get an opportunity for that, and then I don't have a way to break it. Maybe I didn't luck into a way to break it, or I don't have the Seed Glory to break the Bane yet and pass it off to somebody else for another try. And like, hopefully my mobility can help me with this. Hopefully something like my range 2 off of Gorath can help me with this, but this was difficult. So if we slot in the Curse Hungers in place of Opportunistic Leech, all of a sudden we have more reliability potentially with Driven by the Curse, as well as just more reliability of putting damage down on our enemy fighters, and that could even be helping you inspire as well. Yeah, no, it really could, because your inspiration checks at the end of the action phase. So you might be able to get a kill with somebody who's currently rocking your Bane of Heroes. Drink, so remove your hunger counters, and then find a way to break it by the end of the action phase. That way that fighter is good and clear to inspire. So the Curse Hungers has made its way into the build over Opportunistic Leech. Can't recommend that swap enough. And lastly, another swap. Might as well tackle the swap recommendations real quick before we talk about the rest of the hard stuff. Undying Evil. I really wanted this card to be great. So the first version of this deck was tested. The version that you see here that we built on the show was tested in the first 3 games. It was after the first 2 games, maybe, I knew I didn't want Thwarted Destiny in the deck anymore. And it was after the 3rd game I was finally ready to make adjustments. I wanted to make 3 games first with this full build before I made adjustments. And Undying Evil had to get tuned out because it came up in each of the games and failed me in each of the games. It is only a 33% chance. You feel like Like shields is the better defense stat, so you're rolling a dice, and it could do something epic here, and it really could, right? Like just stop that combat sequence. But I wanted to crank this slot up to something more reliable, something that could more often do something for us, especially since there's some awkward cards in this deck, especially in the upgrades, that are looking for key moments. So I wanted something that could more universally assist us. So this gets swapped out for Ripping Claws. And I was very, very happy with this swap out reaction. After this fighter's successful Savage Assault attack action, that's his baked on his card attack, for a nice deal 1 damage to the target. So that is a swap I'd recommend making. Those are the 3 swaps. I then played the next 6 games with all 3 of those swaps, and I liked them quite a bit. Additionally, we have some other hard objectives to just cover in brief. Thwarted Destiny can be hard, but I still really, really like it. So I just wanted to address, like, this is essentially temporary reprieve plus. So either your fighter with the Bane of Heroes died, or you get, and like that could be yours, that could be theirs, and that's where it really feels like temporary reprieve. Or, but what's nice is it's in a turn, so it can happen, like, it doesn't have to happen during an activation. Score this immediately after an Inspire step if the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade was taken out of action in this turn. So the window is wider. So that's already nice. And then the reason I wanted to clarify that it can be a little difficult is you gave your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade to an inspired fighter in that step. This is easier if your opponent has a quick Inspire, and you can pass the Parasite to the opponent after you've broken it. This is harder when you have to rely on your own Inspires and then take away your own Inspires, because they're really valuable. And like, there's only one way to cheat and Inspire quickly. That's Divine Fortitude. And so that can, be worthwhile. We'll Divine Fortitude. We'll toss it back on there. We'll score Thwarted Destiny. We're off to the races with our Seed Glory. But that kind of goes against wanting to score Gravelords, especially early. 2 or more surviving friendly fighters are inspired. So there's some push or pull there. And I just wanted to recognize it, but I still think it's great in the slot. And found to score it pretty reliably. Powerful Pawn and Cursed Tyrant. We'll touch on these real quick. Powerful Pawn. You can guess why this is hard, right? Either your leader needs to be alive and you need to be mindful of that positioning, or you need to pass it off to their leader and keep their leader alive through end phase scoring. So I found that I was often scoring this on my own leader if he was alive, and I was kind of pivoting to their leader if he wasn't alive. But this, again, it has push or pull with Inspires. Like, if you want him inspired, then you have to pass the Parasite to him at some point. For Powerful Pawn, you're uninspiring him. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like he's probably not a candidate for Inspire until you have Powerful Pawn in the clear. And I thought that was interesting. It's just something you got to be mindful of, because at any point in time you can surge into your end phase, and so you want to be planning for that. Cursed Tyrant, I drew it like round 1 all the time. It's an obnoxious time to draw Cursed Tyrant, but overall this card's fine. It's just a very difficult card if you draw it early. If you draw it early, consider mulliganing. And then just keep an eye on who could potentially score this for you, and make sure to keep those upgrades held back if you can until you're sure, and then lock them down on the fighter before you go into scoring. So let's talk about some best cards. And I don't want to spend too much longer on the field report because we have a build to get to, but I had a lot of time and effort into this one, so I wanted to give you a little deeper of a field report if I could. So some of their best cards are definitely Divine Fortitude and Tenacious Resilience. These cards surprised me. Just the fact that once you have a Seed Glory, you can start breaking the Bane of Heroes and have that level of control. It's a nice way to be able to pass the Bane of Hero off to whoever else you might need it to go to. Tenacious Resilience is really interesting too, because once you have a glory, it could just be a heal of 2. Put Tenacious Resilience on, it breaks the Bane, and then as soon as you get to the Inspire step after power, put it back on, break Tenacious Resilience, heal yourself for 2. I did this so often. But that's an upgrade down against Cursed Tyrant. Again, there's some push and pull. Anytime I play Hungarian Parasite, you have to manage some push or pull. Bestial Transformation. We talked in the build about how awesome we thought this would be to be able to have this on-demand break in faction that would also deal out Cleave and Ensnare. Yes, it's a blast. This is a really, really fun card. And it persists beyond rounds too, so you can get pretty spicy with this. I ended up giving this to, because you want to be mindful of where you start with the Parasite and where you want the Parasite to end up. So I could give it to our leader, Duval, knowing that I'm going to break it off of him and pass it off to somebody else. So maybe I break it off of him with Bestial Transformation, and now he's 3 smash, 2 damage, Cleave and Snare. That's really gross, and is so until the equation gets changed by him getting taken out of action or getting past an upgrade. Quicksilver Advance, always just a great staple for them. Being able to move a fighter regardless of token status, so you can charge and then also move. For me, sometimes that's how I scored far and wide, is I'd charge, deal some damage to somebody, and then I'd use Quicksilver Advance to bridge the gap. And sometimes then I would use Tenebrous Form to make sure I stayed on that objective. That's what this card is for, by the way. This is an awkward card, so the last thing we're going to cover is some awkward cards in the deck. If you draw this and you don't have a plan for it, like you have 1 fighter left, you're in round 3, and you kind of needed this to be something else, it can be an awkward draw. But if you still have anything that requires holding an objective left or tossing a fighter into enemy territory, this card can go nuts. Being able to crank up to 3 defense and not be able to be driven back is really good. I found that I would try to even encourage, like, put this fighter deep into their territory and kind of paint a target on their back. Like, this is probably a scoring position. And so if they spent time trying to put damage down on me and I had heals in my hand, it was like insult to injury, because maybe they'd spend an activation and it wouldn't make it through. They'd spend a second activation, it would make it through. Then I could heal and tempt them into another activation. So this card can be pretty great, but it can also be, it's very niche. If there was one Gambit I had to identify as a Gambit available for you to experiment with, like slot-wise, this would be the spot. Like if you don't enjoy this particular card, find good use for it in your games, this is the slot I would entertain. There were so many Gambits that were left on the table in that last build. For example, Dark Glamour, the spell that can put a move counter on a opponent with one of your wizards. Like, I really want that to make it into the build, and maybe Tenebrous Form eventually gets swapped out for that. But right now, I think the Gambits are too tight, and this is kind of your leeway slot. All right, and over here in the upgrades, here's the last of the awkward cards, and then we'll move on to our Starblood Stalker build. Glutton for Gore, Vampiric Might, and Von Marusi Armor. Now, Vampiric Might and Von Marusi Armor have the same issue. They do nothing for you until your fighter is in an inspired state or a bloodthirsty state. So that can just be really rough and something to keep in mind. There were plenty of times where I drew these and I had bloodthirsty fighters, I had fighters that were on 1 or 2 hunger and were not yet at an inspire state or a bloodthirsty state, and I wasn't going to be able to make good use of these cards during the round I had drawn them. And that can just be really rough. Like, you'd rather these be any other card at those times. I think they're still amazing for when you're in those states, and we have a lot of tricks in this deck to try to help get us to those states, but sometimes it can be like a matter of card draw. So just note, these cards can be awkward. but they can be really worth it when they aren't. And then Glutton for Gore. This card is something that you want to see in round 1. If you don't see it in round 1, then it does very little for you. There's a chance it does something for you in round 2 if you pair it with Blood Vial, but if there was one card I was considering cutting from the upgrades, it might be this. The fact that it can get one of my fighters up to Bloodthirsty in round 2 kind of keeps me guessing on whether or not I should keep it around, because it has benefited me. Like that Exiled Dead match, I can't remember if this had been in there, but if it had into round 2, then all of a sudden Velis is scything in round 2 already, as an example. So I think this is probably the most awkward of the upgrade slots, though. All right. Man, I had a lot of fun with this deck, and I hope you have as well. On to our build for the day, though. Jake asked... Jake and I were chatting about a whole bunch of different cards. So if you want to see some of the conversation talked about regarding Crimson Court and specific cards, if you join the Mortal Realms Vassal Discord, there's a link to that on the mortalrealms.com. You can see some of that conversation there in the Underworld's general chat. So I just wanted to highlight that. Like, for example, a card that we talked about was Startling Competence. And I talked about how this card feels like a nothing card, but can really offer a lot. It can help you draw into heals to stay alive, or upgrades to help with Cursed Tyrant, push you back into Bane of Heroes adjacency, or help score Gravelords in round 1. So that is to say, Startling Competence and I are cool for the moment. So, and more conversation like that can be found between Jake and I there. It was really cool of him to represent his thoughts there for all to see as he was experimenting with the build as well. Okay, on to Starblood Stalkers plus Malevolent Masks. Now, why Malevolent Masks, you may ask? That's a great question. The reason we're going with Malevolent Masks today is twofold. One, there are great individuals, and this is the case pretty much anytime we do a build on this show. I just happen to be very aware of the examples I'm about to give today. There's some great decks made by great individuals that I did not want to challenge or repeat, or think that like part of me is like, maybe I'll try to build it and then we'll compare notes and see how close we can get, and that's always fun. And I've done that before with the show. But if you're looking for a Daring Delvers build, which is a great build for them, Phil has run that build with success. He actually took second at Adepticon in 2022 with the 2023, sorry, with Starblood Stalkers plus Daring Delvers, and he loves that build, and it's available on Battle Nemesis Library. Additionally, Bridget took Starblood Stalkers to with Paths of Prophecy to LVO and performed well there as well. And you can listen to her thoughts on Paths of Prophecy with Starblood Stalkers on the Underworld's Underground podcast, as well as see her build on Battle Nemesis Library. So those are two builds that already exist if you're excited to try out Starblood Stalkers. And I didn't want to retread that ground today. I wanted to experiment. I wanted to try something different. So what I did ahead of this episode was I just went into Underworld's DB, and I pulled up Starblood Stalkers in my filter. But more importantly, I just wanted Nemesis pulled up in my filter. And so that I was looking at just Nemesis pairings, and I was typing in with Surge. Well, actually not just with Surge. I selected Objective, and I was looking for hybrid or dual counts and how many cards, we saw that offered hybrid duels, kind of what they were. So I did a little bit of like prep to figure out which pairing I wanted to try today. And Malevolent Masks was the one that came up with the hybrids and the duels that I want to try when looking at a card called the Great Plan. So let me pull up Starblood Stalkers. Let's clear our deck editor here. Let's take a look at the Great Plan. Why did I decide on a whole build around one card and the hybrid and dual keywords. So that's because the Great Plan. Dual. Score this in an end phase if you have scored 6 or more objective cards and you have scored 1 or more surge objectives, 1 or more dual objectives, and 1 or more hybrid objective cards. 3 glory. So as long as Starblood Stalkers have been out, this has been a part of what you think about when you're thinking about building for them. And I wanted to see what we could do today towards the Great Plan. All right, let's take a moment to break these fighters down. So what we have here is we have 2 Inspire conditions and essentially 2 squads of fighters then. There is Clacktrock as 1 squad and then everyone else. So Clacktrock is your bouncer. He inspires if this fighter makes a successful attack action. And then the other fighters inspire after an activation, your warband holds 3 or more objectives. So we're going to have a hold game plan, which I think will fit really nicely along with Malevolent Masks. We'll see together. So Clacktrock, he has 2 attacks. So reaction for Powerful Jaws here. After this fighter's activation, this fighter makes the Powerful Jaws attack action. So Clacktrock can run around and deal 4 damage, like right away, turn 1. Now, odds are not in favor of that happening. He's got a very scary range 1 attack, 2 hammers, 3 damage. But like he could technically follow that up with 1 damage from Powerful Jaws and potentially 1 shot, I suppose 2 shot, a 4 health fighter in a single activation. And Powerful Jaws cannot be modified, so that's good to know. You can never add dice to it. You can never add damage to it. So keep that in mind. But then once he inspires, once he's seen a successful attack, he goes on 2 guard or 2 block. He gets an extra dice on Powerful Jaws as well. So he becomes immensely tough to kill, and he gets a little faster as well. Then over here, the things that we need to keep attention to is the Skittish ability. This is core to this warband. This is a reaction. After an opponent's power step, push this fighter 1 hex away from an enemy fighter within 2 hexes. So if there's enemies hanging out within 2 of us, we want to look for the end of their power step so we can take a reaction and push away. And hopefully we're planning for those push aways to push us on to objectives best, or like anytime we can manage that. So that we can get to our scoring side. Now, all 3 of these little guys here have that. I think they're the only 3 that have that. Yep. So that's kind of what makes them special and unique. Otherwise, they're okay. I'll let their cards speak for themselves. Your main 3 fighters are kind of Kiki-Taka, Clacktrock, and Otapodle. These 3 are your objective holders for the most part. And then Otapodle, what makes him special is this really weird dart pipe. So dart pipe, the target of this attack action cannot be driven back by this attack action. If this attack action succeeds, give the target 1 move token. Extra rude in the world that we live in now, where that could mean that your warband can't charge out. And so it throws 3 dice. Crits are the only successes. So, and they still count as critical successes, but they're the only routes to success, unless you have supports. And then cleave and ensnare on this, which is why supports, or why cleave and ensnare is listed here, is if you have supports and get support results, those come in with cleave and ensnare. Otherwise, crit's going to need a crit, regardless. And Kiki-Taka, pretty good leader over here, and starts on 2 dodge. So the other profiles here, we've got 2 guys rocking shields, so they're only like on their models, so they're only ever at 1 block. And then Tak can actually get up to 2 dodge. 1's inspired and get a little harder to take down. So nice mix of skills over there. Otapodle goes up to 3 dodge, and that dart pipe does extra damage. Say what? So that's rude. And he's really hard to take down at 3 dodge. And then Kiki-Taka here. We're looking at, is this always within 3? Just seeing if this changes at all when it inspires. Yep, okay. This is the one thing I'm going to highlight with him. He's technically a priest, by the way. That is a keyword that's been updated. Clacktrock's technically a brawler. Autopal is technically an assassin. That's cool. I don't think any of that's going to matter in this build. Action, pick one feature token within 3 hexes, then pick one, flip that feature token, or deal 1 damage to one enemy fighter within 1 hex of that token. This fighter can only make this action once per round. I don't know how much we're going to use this action, but it's good to keep in mind, because we could Maskborn Kikitaka in just to use this action. So that's a guaranteed damage from Maskborn, or a guaranteed flip if for some reason that's really important to us at that time. All right, so with introductions out of the way, with the great plan on the slate, let's get into the rest of this build. So let's start with let's start with end phase, since we've already got the great plan there. And let's sort by glory. Let's be greedy. Completed pact, and so this is score this in end phase if there are more surviving friendly fighters with mask upgrades than there are surviving enemy fighters. I don't think this is our play. So this is a play for like Wellner's Exiled Dead, where like he can keep resurrecting fighters even if they're masked, while also trying to put down the enemy force through the crazy swarm aggro that Exiled Dead can be. That makes a lot of sense for them. For us, we're scared until we're inspired, and then once we're inspired, like 2 of us are still pretty fragile, right? And like we kind of, our game is going to be defined often by how much value Clacktrock is able to bring to the table. So if he goes down early, we're going to have a hard time controlling the enemy force, because he can be that bouncer, for us. So I don't think we want completed pact here. Let's move on to Children of Azir. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter is inspired and surviving friendly fighters have 3 or more upgrades. Yeah, I think this is totally fair. This is a duel, so already we're 1 towards the great plan. So, not completed pact, Children of Azir. Here we go. Yeah, so each fighter is inspired. So hopefully, we've been able to hold through at some point in time, get us to that inspired state, and then Clacktrock just needs to make an attack, right? From then, it's about how much seed glory we've had before we've seen this card. One risk with running Children of Azir and the Great Plan in the same deck is they're both going to require cards before them. You don't want to see them until you get the glory rolling. So hopefully that's not the case. We're like, best mulligan would be seeing the Great Plan and the Children of Azir together in the opening hand, and then we ditch that for another and hopefully see them down the line. Worst would be like getting one of them and then getting the other, and it's like, oh, okay, fine. Or even worse, like if you don't have them both in your opening hand, think twice about that mulligan, because what if you draw into both of them? Okay, Seeking the Heart. Hybrid. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter is in enemy territory, or your warband holds each objective in enemy territory. We're going to put it in. We're going to think about it because it's a hybrid. First thoughts? I don't think we're ever going to score it off of each surviving friendly fighter is in enemy territory unless we're at the very end of the game and things are going poorly for us and we just kind of escape. But then again, we're putting a timer on another card, right? All of a sudden we have a 3rd card in here that we really don't want to see until later. Already immediately pulling away from Seeking the Heart. I don't think I'm going to want that one. But I gotta keep it in here because of the hybrid option for now. I want to see how many of those that we manage to get and if there's any hard choices we need to make there. Vengeance of the Heavens. Score this in an end phase if there are more enemy fighters out of action than there are surviving enemy fighters. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know I'm not a fan of cards like this. So more, let me just read that one more time. There are more enemy fighters out of action than there are surviving enemy fighters. Okay, yep. For a second there, my brain rewired and told me that friendly was showing up in here somewhere, but it's not. So we've killed more than half of them. And like, it's not what we're doing. We're trying to score off of holding. Like any kills that we kind of get are bonus. And this can be really hard. Like, it's just so variable based up in matchups, which is why like this is commonly something I will stray away from. If I'm up against Exile Dead, I'm never scoring this. If I'm up against Domiton Stormcoven, I have to kill 2 of them before I'm going to score this. Like, that's going to be extremely late game, and it's not rewarding me with a hybrid or a duel. We're going to pass. Will of the Slan. Score this in an end phase if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in 2 or more players' territories. Oh, yeah, we're going to try for this. For 2 points, let's try for this. So we got to find our way onto an objective in enemy territory. Maybe we can even start with a objective as a landing pad, and that can be used to like charge with Clackchalk. Maybe he makes his attacks, and all of a sudden we're holding. He's on 2 block, and that objective is his until you do something about it. There's a chance that this could be good. Totally overpowered. So this is one of the reasons why we took the Malevolent Masks route, is that this duel existed available to us. Your warband holds 2 or more objectives, and more than half of the fighters in 1 or more enemy warbands are out of action and or have 1 or more wound counters. Is it more than half? More than half. Okay, so we might struggle with the wound counters that we need to deal out to the enemy, but I'm sure we can do the hold too, and I think it's worth pushing ourselves to see if we can't score off of score this card for that duel rare. I think the first part, that'll be easy for us. Second part, a little harder, but talking combos already, we can Maskborn our leader in for that guaranteed damage maybe against somebody. We can use Victrix's Eye to help us with totally overpowered as well. I think we've got routes to it. Balance the cosmic equation. Score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more enemy fighters out of action, or your warband holds more objectives than any other warband. Yeah, I like this in both cases and as a hybrid. So we should be holding more. That's going to be a goal of ours. And if we're up against a hold warband, and it's difficult to hold more against them, then we're probably going to have an easier time taking 2 of them out of action. I think this is fair on both sides of the coin there. Perfect Warrior duel. Score this in an end phase if there is a surviving friendly Clackchalk and each enemy leader is out of action. Oh boy, this is a no. This is 1 glory. This is a duel. I saw a duel. I got a little straighter in my seat, like, oh, another duel option. However, this relies on 1 of our fighters surviving and 1 of their most precious fighters dying, and both pieces being true at the same time when we draw this card. That's a no. Hooded Stranger. Score this in an end phase if 1 or more friendly fighters with a mask upgrade are in enemy territory. When you score this objective, if there are no enemy fighters adjacent to 1 or more of those friendly fighters, gain 1 additional glory point. Yeah, we're going to try for this. This is one of Malevolent Mask's easiest surges, or easiest scores, and I think we've got a couple different reasons to entertain being in enemy territory already. But like just getting somebody over the line at some point. They've got a teleport in here that we might consider, where we can take like Autopodle out. Actually, do they have 2 teleports? We'll find out. I think we've got tools for Hooded Stranger. Stay tuned. Solid Spread. Score this in an end phase if there are 1 or more friendly fighters in your territory, no one's territory, and enemy territory. Do we need this? We already have 7 objectives. I'm not going to do gymnastics for Solid Spread. This is probably fine here, but really only early, and it's not offering us that dual or hybrid, so it's more work than I want to put into it. Stoke Appearance. Score this in an end phase if 1 or more friendly fighters with a mask upgrade are holding an objective. Now this is easy for 1 glory. Probably won't make the cut because this is the 8th objective end phase already added. And Victorious Veils. So this is a card I think that we will also be leaving at home here. This is 3 or more surviving fighters have mask upgrades, and if this is the 3rd end phase, we get 2 additional glory points. Really good in a Resurrection Warband. I think more often than not, by the very end of the game, we'll be down to a couple of fighters, and maybe there are masked fighters, but I don't want to rely on this. I feel like often we'd be cashing this in early for the 1 glory, and I'd rather do Stoke Appearance in that case, and keep all of our risk for those late cards in things like Children of Azir and the Great Plan. Cool. Well, we won't touch these anymore until we get a better picture of the game plan, but we got 8, so that's a healthy, extremely healthy place to start with an end phase pool. Let's just make sure that there aren't any third end phase specifically. Cool. There aren't. And surges. All right, so we've got 11 to choose from here. We need 6. Can we search? Oh, sweet. Okay, so we're searching immediately by description to see what our dual and hybrid options are. 1 dual and 3 hybrid. How are we doing on duels overall? We've got 1 duel in Children of Azir. Great Plan doesn't count. And 1 in Totally Overpowered. So we have 2 duels. So can we afford Feast of Violence? Ooh, so we need to see both of those duels before the Great Plan, the ones that we have today, and score them. Totally Overpowered being the more likely. Actually, they're both pretty likely. But Children of Azir is going to require some Seed Glory. So it's about drawing order here. And if we can get a third duel in there, that's awesome. If it's a Surge duel, then we're actually completing the Great Plan faster. Same with the Surge Hybrid. You're meeting 2 conditions, Surge, Hybrid, and Duel, in 1 card. So let's put Feast of Violence in for now. This is Duel scores immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action if that was the third or subsequent range 1 or range 2 attack action made by a friendly fighter in the same phase. And each of those attack actions was made in a different activation step. And I believe this card has actually been errated. We don't see it here, but let's go take a look at the Underworld's FAQ site real quick. Let's see. Feast. Yeah, Feast of Violence. So 3 or more of those attack actions were made in a different activation step. This is just so that this card doesn't brick itself. All right, let's go back. Because otherwise, if you ever made more than 1 attack action in a phase, let's see, each of those attack actions was made in a different, if you, as written, you made 2 attack actions in a single activation like Scything, that would hurt this. Or if you took attack actions in the power step, that would hurt this. It would brick this. So the FAQ is just to make sure that you can still score this as intended. So enough said on Feast of Violence. I don't like it. I think we're going to get rid of it because I think we're going to just have to rely on the other 2 to help us. Because otherwise, our range 3 attacks don't help with Feast of Violence. That's the rub here. Okay. So Vision of Success and Audacious Aspect. We're going to try to bring both of these. This is a friendly fighter with a mask upgrade holds an objective with an even value. That's the main thing here. Audacious is the same with an odd. Now, Vision of Success also says, or your warband holds 3 or more objectives, 1 or more of which are in no one's and or enemy territory. So this could be a Seed Glory for us, because this is immediately after an activation step. So if there's something that we can get to in no one's or enemy territory, and we're able to push and prep in advance, get people onto 2 other objectives, then at the end of our activation step, when we land on that one in no one's or enemy territory, we might be able to just score Vision of Success and get the ball rolling. So this is going to be a really good card in this build, I think. Audacious Aspect. Score this immediately after an activation step if 1 or more friendly fight. Oh, sorry. I'm reading it straight up after I had said it's the odd value. So 1 or more friendly fighters with a mask upgrade holds an objective with an odd value, or your warband holds 2 or more objectives, each of which is in no one's or enemy territory. So the potential's there for the second one, but definitely not early game, I don't think. I don't think we want to risk too many fighters in those positions early game. Late game, maybe. But the odd value with a mask should be pretty easy. Get a Seed Glory and then use it to get a mask onto somebody who's already holding an odd. There's 3 odds out of the 5 that are going to be on the board. Death's Visage. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter with a mask upgrade takes an enemy fighter out of action, or your warband's 3rd or subsequent successful attack action in the same phase. Interestingly, we can entertain this one. So mask upgrade getting a kill, maybe. I think we've got a healthy amount of hybrids, so we might not need this. We might be able to filter this one out. But it's not range restricted on the attack actions. It's not activation restricted like Feast of Violence is, right? This has to be on 3 different activations is when these attacks are being made. Ooh, I think they have a Gambit that might help us with Feast of Violence. There's a way to attack back during an enemy activation. So that could help with Feast of Violence, but I still think Feast of Violence is probably pretty bad in here. It could also help with Death's Visage. So I think Death's Visage gets to hang because we could also try Powerful Jaws as additional attacks here. Domino Dominance. Score this immediately after a power step if 1 or more surviving inspired friendly fighters have a mask upgrade. So we inspire pretty easily, and as long as one of those fighters is able to get a mask, then and we inspire collectively as well is really cool. So as long as we're able to get the inspire done and then get a mask onto somebody, they can score us Domino Dominance after a power step. I have had a lot of success with this card in warbands where the inspire is easy. This card's value is based strictly off of how easy your inspire is. So we're definitely going to put that in, try for that. Formidable Focus. Score this immediately after an activation if there are more friendly fighters. If 3 or more friendly fighters are in enemy territory, I think we'll pass. I want to keep us safe and in our home territory as much as possible. And as a surge, I want to be able to get it round 1 if I can. Sotex Hunters. Surge. Score this immediately after an activation in which a friendly fighter made a ranged 3+ attack action that took an enemy fighter out of action. I would rather have I would rather have Death's Visage over Sotex Hunters. So a range 3 is getting the kill, or a masked fighter is getting the kill with a hybrid like potential here and no range requirements. So it can be my range 3 fighters, it can be my range 2 fighters. Whoever's masked kind of opens Death's Visage up. I prefer this over Sotex Hunters. So over to Heralds of Annihilation. Score this immediately after an activation in which a friendly fighter made an attack action that took an enemy leader out of action. I don't like cards that only work if you can hunt down and take their leader out. Leaders are often your best fighter in a warband, and sometimes like the linchpin, and so you're guarding him or her. Like you're keeping these fighters safe most of the time, and they're generally harder to take down. So we're going to pass on Heralds of Annihilation. Slaughter Satisfied. Score this immediately after an activation step if there are more enemy fighters out of action than there are surviving enemy fighters. We know I'm going to pass on this one. Instinctive Tactics. Score this immediately after resolving your warband's 2nd or subsequent reaction in the same phase. I love cards like this, especially surges. So we're going to take this. This also reads skitter once and react in some other way, or be lucky enough to just skitter twice. However, that's kind of scary. You have been invaded if that's happening, or maybe it's just late game. But Instinctive Tactics is, I think, one of their best surges. Astro Matrix Alignment being the other. Score this immediately after you flip a feature token in enemy territory. In enemy territory? What? Okay, hold on. I mean, I still like it. But for some reason, I had summarized this card in my head as score this immediately after you flip a feature token. In enemy territory. Okay. So we've got 7 surges, and I'm not hot on Feast of Violence, so we'll see if that tunes itself out. And 8 objectives. All right, on to the next piece here, we're going to go straight into Gambits. Let's not separate this based on description. Let's just do, how is this normally done? Set? I think it's normally done by number. I think number is probably the default sort. So we'll start with theirs instead of masks. Choose Burst from the Shadows. Choose up to 2 friendly hunters. Push each chosen fighter up to 2 hexes. I'm sure this is awesome, but let's go take a look at how many hunters we have. That is everybody that is not Kikitaka and Clacktrack. So that is 4 hunters. 4 of these fighters can be pushed 2. That's wild. Together. So yeah, Burst from the Shadows is an auto include. Huanchi's Device. I think Gambits are going to be a struggle point here. So whenever we're pairing with masks, we want some easy surges, if we can, to help make masks happen. And thankfully, just their game plan and some of their abilities already help make things like Vision of Success a little bit easier. So this becomes kind of one of our easy seed glories. It's not necessarily one that they bring, but one that can help facilitate. Instinctive Tactics as well. And I'd still say Astromatrix Alignment. If you have this in your opening hand, you can always, this is kind of mean to Clacktrack, but you can always charge Clacktrack into enemy territory and on a landing pad that you planned, and then flip it. And now he's staggered. So unfortunately, he's kind of like stuck serving his purpose then, and he's also not applying to your hold value or anything looking for hold. Maybe that's a bad idea. I know this card's good. We'll see if there's anything that we can do to help this card. But Instinctive Tactics and Vision of Success is helping us the most with our Seed Glory here. Okay. And then I suppose the reason we were talking about Seed Glory is, so when you're pairing with Malevolent Masks, you want as much of that as you can bring. And then you want room in your upgrades. First and foremost, for the masks, I don't actually know what that picture looks like here. We'll find out. And then there's a push or pull with your Gambits. The more Gambits you take from masks, the more you consider something like Scrabble in the Dirt to recur. And I think we're going to have a lot of really good Gambits here. Pull away from that picture and probably end up leaving Scrabble in the Dirt on the table. Huanchi's Device. Pick one, push one enemy fighter 1 hex, or pick an opponent. That player picks 3 fighters from their warband and pushes each of them 1 hex. If they have fewer than 3 surviving fighters, they push each of their surviving fighters 1 hex. So either you're pushing exactly an enemy that you would like 1 hex, and this is unlimited range, so that already is awesome, or pick an opponent and they're being forced to pick 3. Up to 3 their fighters. So this could be push 1 fighter off of like an objective. This could potentially, if they're trying to hold objectives in force, you could be pushing them off of even more objectives by forcing that player to push their own fighters. This is a really good card. We're going to be taking Huanchi's Device, and it's going to be staying in the build. First 2 are sure-ins so far. Invisible Hunter. Remove a friendly autopodal from the battlefield. That fighter is not out of action. This card persists until the end of the round. When this card no longer persists, place that fighter in an empty hex not adjacent to an enemy fighter. You cannot play this card in round 3. So, I guess in this deck, there's something cheeky you could do with this. You could Maskmorn a fighter onto the board. I think. I'm really curious how this interaction would go. I think you could Maskmorn Autopodal back onto the board and then use Invisible Hunter to take him off the board, and now he actually gets to come back and is at full health. So that's just funny. That's more cute than good, because he'd have to die in rounds 1 or 2. And you'd have to draw both of those cards, and he'd have to have a mask. Like there's a lot of ands there. So just funny that interaction potentially exists. But I think what makes this card maybe a pass, I've heard that this is the 11th card This is a card, if you listen to Underworld's Underground, that Bridget always wants to put into her deck, but doesn't quite always doesn't quite make it in. And I think part of that is because they're not coming back in for scoring, and I think that's rough. Like the fact that they are out of play when you would need them to be holding, and Autopottle's really good at holding with his multiple defense. To then bring him back maybe in enemy territory, which is a way that like we could get some presence in enemy territory. But I think overall, I don't like the fact that this is locked to one fighter. It's not restricted to them. We can't salvage this if they're dead. And the fact that when this is in effect, they're not going to help us with scoring. We're going to pass on Invisible Hunters. Or Invisible Hunter. Light of the Stars, reaction. Play this after an opponent plays a Gambit. That Gambit deals no damage. I want to try this card in this current meta so bad. So we're going to try Light of the Stars. It's also a reaction. So that could help us with our instinctive tactics. Lords of Space and Time. Choose one friendly fighter that is not adjacent to any enemy fighters. Place that fighter in the same hex as an objective token in enemy territory, not adjacent to any enemy fighters. Then give that fighter one move token. So Lords of Space and Time, we will be taking, and we will be seeing if we can't use towards some cheeky enemy territory hold, and maybe even jumping across the map when we're getting pressured, things like that. I think this card's really good. I also didn't realize that if there's a fighter adjacent to a hex, I can't jump to it. I don't think that that's counterplay I've ever logged into my brain when I've been up against Phil, and I hope to never forget, because there have been times where I've been like, oh, I need to get onto these objectives, or he's going to Lords of Space and Time onto them. And apparently that's not the case. I can just chill right next to it and prevent that already. So that's good to know. Sotek's Venom. Reaction. Play this during a friendly fighter's attack action. After the deal damage step, give the target one move token. I'm going to consider this because we just need a successful attack to get a reaction, and then the move token is potentially huge. So we're going to consider it. I imagine this might end up seeing a cut because I'm not sure it's going to do enough towards the overall game plan, and there might be cards that are fighting to get in. Tepix Mystery. Pick one opponent. That player picks one objective card from their hand and shuffles that objective card back into their objective deck. Then that player draws one objective card. The mystery is, when could you use this card to good effect? On to Bulwark Celestial. This is an asterism. There's a few of these, and they persist until like a different asterism were to come into play, or until the end of the round. They all work like that. So here we have friendly fighters cannot be driven back. Seems pretty good. This effect, like I said, persists until the end of the round, or until any player plays another asterism card. So if you're in a mirror match, you can bump each other's asterisms out. If you're not in a mirror match, it's not going to come up. There's no other asterisms in the game. Since we're looking to stay on objectives, if I were to take a tied defense result, I don't necessarily want to be driven off of that. And this lasts quite a while. So I think this is worth considering, keeping our people in the spots we want them to score from. The Great Drake. +1 dice to friendly fighters' range 1 attack actions. This effect persists until the end of the round, or until any player plays another asterism card. I think we're going to fit that one into, let's see, range 1 only? I think that's a few of our fighters. So it's not our leader. It's definitely Clacktrack. Oh, and that's just Huachi and Kepik. I mean, the fact that it can crank Clacktrack up to 3, though. Okay. Well, I suppose if I had to cut one of these two, the Great Drake or the Bulwark Celestial, it would be the Great Drake first. But let's keep it in. I want to consider Hunter's Steed as well. Part of this might just be like an allure of wanting to try out these asterism cards. We're on move 3 and we're on move 4 at the beginning, so like we're pretty fast already, except for Clacktrack. But to get him up to 4 before he gets inspired, or 5 once he is inspired, seems good. Sometimes this can help us reach tricky objectives that are like held outside of like our starting hex launch points. So there can be a lot of value there, to the point where if we're cutting, I'm probably again cutting the Great Drake before I cut Hunter's Steed. Funneled Soul Stuff. I hate this card. You can heal 1 each friendly fighter with a mask upgrade. Deal 1 damage to each other friendly fighter. You can't play this card if you only have masked fighters left, which is a bummer. And you're like mandatory dealing damage to yourself. Can you combo this with what's the reaction called? Is it Light of the Stars? An opponent plays a Gambit. No, you can't combo it. Not that I wanted to. That's not a combo worth pursuing, but I was curious. Hooded Rush. We're going to take this card for sure. Choose a friendly fighter with 1 or more upgrades. Push the chosen fighter 1 hex. So as long as we've invested some seed glory into them, then they get a push of 1. Otherwise, if it's a mask, you can push the chosen fighter up to 2 hexes instead. We're going to grab Maskborn as well. Reason we're going to grab Maskborn is because of Kikitaka. There's other reasons why we might want to be able to bring a masked fighter back in, like if it's a Victrix Xi fighter. This is kind of trying to help us secure totally overpowered, I think, in most cases. But if we can fit Maskborn in, I think there's some tricks that we can do here that would be worthwhile. Also, being able to get a second defender style attack off with Clacktrack's pretty great. So to just be like, we're going to be bringing enemies to our territory. That's where we're going to be holding. Like, I think often you're going to want a delta on your side with your objectives, where you have like that triangle that's formed with a lead objective facing their way that guarantees your ability to place objectives 2 and 3 in the back, or your second and third placements there. I think that's going to be a common strategy. I could be wrong. I'm very interested to see as I play them if going for that delta is kind of like a mainstay of their strategy, because that helps them get everybody inspired really quickly, or if I'm more interested in an objective over the line as a landing pad. But if we're inviting them into our territory and we're trying to keep our fragile fighters safe in our territory, being able to bring Clacktrack in with Maskborn and threaten 3 damage is pretty great. Okay. Possessive Crouch. Choose a friendly fighter. Give the chosen fighter a guard token. If the chosen fighter has a mask upgrade, stagger each fighter adjacent to the chosen fighter. I think I want to bring this for a couple of reasons. One, if we have Astro Matrix alignment in our hand and we want to send somebody over into enemy territory to just sit on and delve a token real quick, we can then shore them up with a guard token if we're lucky enough to have both in our hand. Guard also prevents us from being driven back and can really elevate some of these stat lines. Can you imagine trying to chew through Autopodle on 3 dodge on guard? Revealed Aspect. This is a favorite of mine. There's just so many tricks to this card. We're going to see if we can't make room for it. So at worst, it's drawing you a different power card and replacing itself. At best, it's taking an upgrade of great value from either the discard pile or a dead fighter and getting it onto one of your alive fighters. So choose, and that's all written in this fashion. Choose a friendly fighter, including fighters who are out of action with 1 or more upgrades. Add 1 of those upgrades to your hand. Then give the chosen fighter 1 upgrade from your hand or power discard pile. Do not spend any glory points when you do so. So you pick a dead fighter, then you're picking up 1 upgrade from them, tossing them something that you don't need. If you're picking an alive fighter, then you're you're able to like even give them something from the discard pile. You'll grab something from them, grab something from the discard pile, and toss it over to them. So great card. Tons of tricks to be had with Revealed Aspect. Scramble in the Dirt. I think we're leaving this one at home. I know it exists. I'm not going to bring it into our list right now. I'm just going to think about it, probably talk about it a little bit more. It's your ability to pick a Gambit with the Malevolent mask symbol in your discard pile, power discard pile, and add that card to your hand, then discard one power card. So cost a card. Generally, it's going to be like a mask that you ended up not needing because you're going to flood your upgrades with masks so that you have them when you need them. You're never just without the mask keyword. But then as a result, every once in a while, as you get through the game, you'll have a mask in your hand that you don't need, or maybe just a Gambit that's not perfect for the situation, and there's one that is in the discard pile, and so you'll trade that out. All courtesy of Scrabble in the Dirt. Shuddering Violence. Choose a friendly fighter, stagger the chosen fighter, +1 dice to the first range 1 or range 2 attack action made by the chosen fighter in the next activation. If the chosen fighter has a mask upgrade, you can reroll 1 attack dice in the attack roll of that fighter's first attack actions made in the next activation. I almost never run this card. I don't like the downside. It is range 1 or 2, so it's very limited for us. Not terribly. Like Tiki Taka sneaks into the picture with the range 2. How are we doing? We're doing great. We don't need to consider it. The +1 dice is great. Being able to reroll is great. If I was playing some sort of like more aggro masks build, this would probably make it in for sure, and I'd eat the stagger cost here because it's worth it. However, it's not the main point of our game plan here. So like my best case I'm imagining for this is I get this and I'm able to do this with Clacktrock like really early to help him get inspired, because I just threw more dice at it and was able to get a 3 damage attack on in, and that's extremely tempting. But for now, I'm gonna leave this one. Taking Over. This is something we're gonna need to find room for. So I think the cut's gonna be really hard. We're already at 13 Gambits, and I don't really feel blah about any of them. I feel pretty good about what we've been adding in here. But Taking Over. Choose a friendly fighter with a mask upgrade that has an action on that mask upgrade. The chosen fighter makes that action. So we'll see once we get to the masks how great that can be. This is an extremely strong card. It's one of the few times too where combos exist in the game, have always existed in the game, but this is a card that you never see somebody going, oh, it's a combo card, I don't know, I'm gonna leave it at home. Like you're bringing so much to make sure that this combos that it ends up entering every mass deck, and it should. Unexpected Arrival. Choose 2 friendly fighters with mask upgrades. Place each fighter in the hex that was occupied by the other fighter when you chose them. I think this would be really funny for moving Clacktrack around the board, or even Autopodle. However, I think we're going to pass on Unexpected Arrival just due to sheer quality of choices already. And then Unveiled Ambition. Also, Unexpected Arrival requires 2 Seed Glory before it starts working. And 2 masks have been drawn and applied before it starts working. It's a great card, but only once those conditions are true. And so that can be rough, and that can kind of turn it into that 11th card that doesn't necessarily always make it into builds. And Unveiled Ambitions. Search your power deck for a mask upgrade, reveal that card and add it to your hand, then shuffle any remaining cards in your power deck. We're going to add this, but we're probably going to cut it. So Unveiled Ambitions, my philosophy with this card is you want to bring 5 masks minimum, and so 6 if you can, but if you're only bringing 5, maybe you bring Unveiled Ambitions, or if you're only bringing 4, then you definitely bring Unveiled Ambitions. This counts to me as an additional mask, and it's like a second copy of the mask that you really want it to be. So if you really need, let's say, Echo Guys, then you have Echo Guys in here and you have Unveiled Ambitions in here. And if whichever one you draw first is Echo Guys, as an example. So not only is it a mask on demand of your choosing, and it can be any of them for the situation that presents itself, which ups the value. So you're not just thinking like, oh, this is just Echo guys. Like, it can be very situational. You can have taking over and this in your hand. You can be like, what would make the best taking over play right now? And I think that's really cool. I don't think we're gonna have room for it though. We're probably gonna have to go 5 masks in upgrades, and leave unveiled ambitions at home. All right, on to the upgrades. I'm gonna take a drink of water here, so bear with me. Da, 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 da. Hydration. All right, one more drink. Okay, upgrades time. Now when I do the bookmarks, I can skip the drinking. If you don't watch these live and you catch the VOD, I add bookmarks. Usually it's within a week of when I post the video. So I'm actually not allowed to manipulate it. Like, YouTube won't let me manipulate the video until the next day, which is weird. I guess it's some sort of like processing time thing. But then once I get access to it, I will, within a few days, usually try to get bookmarks up. By the time I get to the next episode that I'm doing live, bookmarks should be up, because usually I'll find some free time between weeks to get those going. But it'll be like field report, fighter breakdown, objectives, ploys, upgrades, the trim, which I'm looking forward to here, and good name, the final task, and then our outro. So bookmarks always get added, and I think that's kind of nice too if you want to jump back to a previous video that you maybe were able to catch live, and you're like, oh, what was that upgrade again? You can skip straight to upgrades. All right, on to upgrades. See what I did there? With upgrades, we're going to start with the masks, I suppose. I feel like it's easier. Well, let's see how much room we have for the masks. I like that plan here better, actually. So, adaptive camouflage. Let's start seeing what the pressure looks like for how many masks we're going to be able to take. -1 dice to a minimum of 1 from attack actions that target this fighter if the attacker is not adjacent. So this is Autopodal specifically. If the target is not adjacent, that's spicy. So you have to get adjacent to Autopodal. I don't think I need this. I'm already on 2 or 3 dodge, 3 ideally. I'm gonna leave this out of the considerations for now, but I don't hate it. Astrolith Igniter reaction during a friendly fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack action. Before the attack roll, spend 1 glory. That attack action gains cleave until it has been resolved. I'm gonna add this because it's a reaction, and I think it might be nice to be able to have an on-card reaction to help us out with what's it called? Instinctive tactics. Cleave is cool, and it's nice. It's like it's interesting. This card doesn't just say, friendly fighters within X hexes or something like that, have cleave on the range 1 or range 2 attacks. It says, anywhere, any friendly can at the cost of a glory, and sometimes you have glory to spare once you get the ball rolling. So let's entertain that, because you'll know too when you want to spend that glory for that cleave, like when cleave is going to matter. Cloak of Feathers, +2 move. When this fighter makes a move action, it can move through occupied hexes and cannot be dealt damage by lethal hexes. It must end its move action in an empty hex. This is Kikitaka restricted. So, +2 move, can be part of charges, can be through lethals without taking damage. I don't know if we specifically need to speed up Kikitaka. He's already 4. He's got a range 3 and a range 2. I don't know. I don't think that's necessary. especially since we're going to have pressure from the mass department. Let's leave the +2 move alone. We have a +1 move in Asterism that we can consider. Heaven Blessed Weapon, +1 dice, and knockback 1 to this fighter's range 1 attack actions. I think I like this quite a bit. So, yeah, extra dice for a few fighters as well as knockback. So you can also work on getting fighters that are holding off or potentially open up some tricks with the lethals that have kind of started becoming more and more board present. Yeah, Heaven Blessed Weapon, I think, will make the cut. We'll see what else is vying for it. If this fighter is within 3 hexes, Herald of the Old Ones here, of a friendly skink that is the target of an attack action, you can reroll 1 defense dice in the skink's defense roll. Oh, okay. If this fighter is within 3 hexes of a friendly skink, and that skink is the target of an attack action, you can reroll 1 defense dice. And okay, so as long as Kikitaka is alive, he can be a bubble to protect our skinks. I think I like that, even maybe more than Heaven Blessed Weapons. So we've got 3 that we're feeling pretty good about. Selfless Sacrifice. This is what I was thinking about before with like attacks out of sequence. During an attack action that targets this fighter, after the deal damage step, if this fighter will be taken out of action, this fighter makes an attack action. This is for a skink. I like this card quite a bit. I have had this card just totally kill me when I've been up against Phil, and it's like, well, you know, you've got to kill this skink, and your game plan's saying so, your counterplay is saying so, but unfortunately, you're also going to risk taking an attack back, and sometimes that attack can take you down, or be the difference. Like this fighter can potentially help with totally overpowered, maybe a full healther is coming in on you, and even if you can't kill them, you're able to get some damage off before you die. Spawning Bond. Reaction. After another friendly skink is pushed from a hex within 3 hexes, push this fighter 1 hex. Ooh, I like that. Okay, so now we're getting some strong pressure here on our upgrades. Supreme Predator. Clacktrock only. This fighter is a hunter. This fighter cannot be a quarry. Each enemy fighter is a quarry. You can re-roll 1 dice in this fighter's attack rolls if the target is a quarry. That includes your Powerful Jaws. That seems really good. And this is salvageable on a target that they really want to take down. So I don't mind the salvageability here at all. Ooh, boy. Feeling the pressure. Unfeeling Resilience. When this fighter is dealt damage, reduce that damage by 1 to a minimum 1. That's generally really good. There's no range limitations there. We'll take a look at our health pool when we're at the trim and how we feel about damage reduction. +1 move, +2 move instead if this fighter is a skink. Unhesitating. I don't think we have the room for this. We're going to pass. All right, so we're on to the masks. So we have 7 upgrades from skinks pressuring the masks. So we're probably going to have to cut 2 of these. Maybe only 1. But I think at least 2 of these are going to have to get cut. And maybe we have to cut a ton of asterisms to help make room for Unveiled Ambitions. We'll feel this out. So Dark Humor is a great card. You can reroll 1 defense dice in this fighter's defense rolls. And then if this fighter has a mask upgrade, you make the following reaction if a crit is rolled in the defense. Mocking Laugh reaction. Use this after an attack action that targeted this fighter. If this fighter's defense roll contained 1 or more critical successes, push the attacker 1 hex. So didn't even need to successfully defend. You just needed to have if this fighter's defense roll contained 1 or more, a critical success in the roll. I mean, you need to be alive at the very least to have this reaction go off. So maybe a tie. But as long as you have the critical success, you can push the attacker 1 hex. The main reason you're taking this is the reroll 1 defense dice in this fighter's defense rolls. I don't know if I was pressed if I was going to take this or Herald of the Old Ones? Yes, Herald of the Old Ones. This is allowing me to reroll in skinks, so 4 different fighters, assuming Kikitaka is alive, whereas this is only allowing me to reroll on the specific fighter. And so I think Herald of the Old Ones kind of wins out here. But if we could have both, that would be awesome. I just don't know if we're going to have room for both. We'll take a look. Displacing figurine, we're not going to have room for this, but it is cool. This is one of those builds where I think it has a little more consideration. But I do think it's not going to make the cut. Pick an objective in an empty hex. Place this fighter on the objective you picked. Give this fighter 1 charge token. Then break this card. We're just going to kind of pass from this one. The action cost is a lot here. The upgrade cost is, or the upgrade slot is 2 vied for here. Envy's Shroud. So we're going to put all 6 masks in, and then we'll figure out which mask we want to cut in the trim. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'll read through the masks real quick after the other 2 upgrades, just so those unfamiliar with what the mask can really do for them will still explore those conversationally. Menacing Posture. Reaction after this fighter's action that pushes 1 or more enemy fighters. Push this fighter 1 hex towards one of those fighters. This is a card I would normally put in a hold build. So we're going to put it in. I don't know what we're cutting after this, but like, so what this does is if you drive them back with an attack, then you're able to push that fighter that made this attack into that spot. So you're able to trade onto the objective with the person that you were able to just push off of it. So that's usually what Menacing Posture is going to be for. It gets a little extra bonus from the fact that it works really well with the Howling Hood as well. We'll get to that in a second. Unassailable Stance. -1 defense to a minimum of 1. Rolls of shield and dodge are successes in this fighter's defense rolls. We don't need this. So I don't like this card because when you have 1 defense dice, it's often going to be the crit that you need to save you when multiple dice are coming in. And so being able to elevate a shield fighter up to also having a dodge, you're really only unlocking 1 more success result. So you've changed it from a 50-50 to a 66% chance of success, which is better, but it's not doing much. And in this case, it's not doing much on only 2 fighters. On 2 fighters, because once we get inspired, right, Huachi and Kepik are really the only ones that would qualify. Everybody else, we don't want to make their probability worse by reducing how many dice they're rolling. So Huachi and Kepik here are the only 2 that really qualify, and I don't like it. So Unassailable Stance continues to never make it into my decks. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the masks real quick. Envy Shroud is +1 wounds, and it can be the only upgrade on that fighter. So that is kind of a restriction you have to play around with. It'll clear out any upgrades that you had on before, and you won't be able to put new upgrades on unless you put on a mask upgrade. It's the only other mask, or the only other upgrade that can be accepted, and that's for a reason. It's because all other masks say when a fighter has 2 mask upgrades, break 1. So you can put a mask down on somebody who has Envy Shroud and then break Envy Shroud, or break the one that just came in, but that's kind of a weird choice that you're making at that point. You're probably most of the time breaking Envy Shroud for something else. There could be a scenario where you just really need that +1 wound, but never if Envy Shroud's already the first one on that fighter, right? So the Echo guys, reverberating call action. So they're all going to have their own specific action, except for Envy Shroud. This one, pick 2 feature tokens, one of which this fighter is on. Place each feature token in the hex the other feature token was in when you picked them. Rolls of double support are successes in this fighter's defense rolls until the end of the round in which this action was made. I like this card quite a bit, especially with masks. It can help you switch 2 feature tokens for evens or odds. It can help you switch a token that you've plundered in for an objective. And once you've done this action, you're also gaining a defensive boost, even if you leave that feature token for the rest of the round. So Echo guys is going to be great in this build. It's going to be something that we keep in this build. The Eternal Smile. This is the Rictus of Carnage action. +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions other than scything attack actions. until the end of the round. Now remember, this can't go and modify powerful jaws, but it's still really good in the other cases where we have +1 or we have range 1 and range 2 attack actions. Even that first attack from Clacktrock could be immense with that +1 damage. Frostbitten Veil. I think this is probably one of the most potent masks, if not the most potent. Power Surge. You can reroll each dice in the spider's attack rolls until the end of this round. That's crazy. So if you get this onto Clacktrock, you're rerolling all of his dice in both attacks. Well, as much as you want. Now, you do have to use the action, but that's why we brought Taking Over, is so that we can cheat that action out sometimes. And that's why we might bring Unveiled Ambition, so that we can get this, if this is the thing that we want, we can get this out and get this on, like Clacktrock, for example, and make him really, really scary really quickly. Howling Hood. When a fighter has 2 mask upgrades, break 1. Again, that's on all of these, actually. Abyssal Howl. Choose a fighter adjacent to this fighter, push the chosen fighter up to 2 hexes, then stagger the chosen fighter. So the stagger is a nice bonus here. It also means that they're not going to be able to delve unless they find a way to shake that stagger token. And the push is really nice, so you can walk up to somebody who's on guard, for example, and push them regardless of their normal ability to hold that spot down, or a Void Curse fighter. And then you can follow that up with Menacing Posture if you have both, and push into the spots that they once were. And then Vitreous' Eye. Piercing Stare action. This fighter makes the following attack action. And so it's a range 3, 2 hammers, 1 damage, with Grievous 1 and Cleave. So it can go up to 2 damage, and it has Cleave built in, which is really cool. So let's take a look at what we got. So we've got 15 upgrades. So we got way too many upgrades. We're going to cut one of the masks for sure. I'm not yet confident if it's going to be Envy Shroud or something different. A lot of the times I cut Howling Hood. And that's probably going to be the one I cut here too, just based on historical tests. Now, I've mainly played masks with Mournflight up until this point, so they're also looking for a hold picture, but it does look a little different. And so +1 wounds in that warband can bring somebody up to 4 health, whereas here, yeah, it can bring Kiki-Taka up to 4, but for the most part, it's only bringing people up to 3, and that can be enough to make it so very limited amount of fighters on their side can do what needs doing. It can also get Clacktrock up to a large fighter. So I'm feeling pretty good about Envy Shroud. I don't really want to cut it. I generally hem and haw about if it should be Envy Shroud, Eternal Smile, which is a source of +1 damage. So it always feels weird to be in the potential cut. But we can talk about maybe it being Eternal Smile or Howling Hood. So let's keep Envy Shroud. So we're shifting the conversation to Eternal Smile or Howling Hood. And I think we'll cut Howling Hood. We've got so many other tricks that this will continue to be, unfortunately, the mask I cut. And we'll see. Maybe I come back from the field report and talk about how there were times where I really wanted to get onto objective. I couldn't, and I could have just pushed the fighter if I had Howling Hood. We'll see. That also means that you have some sort of trick to get on. Well, man. I think the +1 damage, range 1 and range 2. Do I have any other sources of +1 damage? I don't think I do. I think being able to threaten a little bit extra damage than I normally would isn't the worst thing in the world. And I'm already starting to think that we might have another mask that we need to cut anyways. So there's a chance I still cut +1 damage and switch over to Unveiled Ambition being like our 5th mask. How many masks do I really feel we need? We need quite a bit. It can really help with Death's Visage. It can really help with 3 different surges here, as well as Hooded Stranger and Stoke Appearance. Yeah, I don't feel comfortable tipping below 5, whether that's 4 with Unveiled or 5 total. Okay, so then let's look at what else we can cut from upgrades. So this is going to be a bit difficult. So we need to weed 4 out or 3 in a mask. So Clacktrock gets full. You can reroll 1 dice in this fighter's attack rolls if the target is a quarry. So he gets rerolls, just him. But we could, and that's good because like it's on demand, right? The difference between it and something like Frostbitten Veil is our ability to like turn it on right away without having to use something like Taking Over to make that happen. So I do think this is on the chopping block though. It is good, but we need the mask keyword. So we're going to have to pick Frostbitten Veil first and foremost. And then the question is there still room for Supreme Predator, or do we kind of forego this and only really have this happening when the Frostbitten Veil is in play and working towards that same goal? Spawning Bond. Reaction after another friendly skink is pushed from a hex within 3 hexes. Push this fighter 1 hex. So I think this might actually weed itself out here. It might be harder than I think for this to line up, because so these fighters have to be alive. They have to have just been pushed from a hex within 3. I guess it combos with Burst from the Shadows and Hooded Rush though. So it can actually be like use one of our own Gambits to push a friendly skink. Oh, it also combos with Skittish, doesn't it? Okay. There's a lot more for on first read. I was like, so this is about drivebacks, but it's about much more than drivebacks. So maybe Spawning Bond tries to find its way to stay. Astrolith Igniter might be on its way out. Supreme Predator, I think, is on its way out. Heaven Blessed Weapon, I like a lot. I don't really want to get rid of. Damage reduction on some of our key fighters would be really good. So I want to keep Unfeeling Resilience around. So let's get rid of Supreme Predator. Let's get rid of Astrolith Igniter. And then we got to get rid of at least 1 more. And I don't want it to be... I don't want it to be Spawning Bond because of the reaction potential or Selfless Sacrifice. They both also add enough on their own outside of the reaction, so it's kind of like double value. And so I think Dark Humor might have to get cut because this is a single shot at a reroll here. Oh, you know, I'm forgetting that I still have Menacing Posture and Dark Humor to consider cutting yet. Let's keep Menacing Posture in. I really like it with a hold build. Now, I might be thinking a little more about hold builds that I've played where I'm being a little bit of aggressive and like trying to pull people off of positions and then put myself on positions. And so I might be valuing Menacing Posture more than I should be valuing Dark Humor, where the goal is to prevent somebody from pulling me off. So this is kind of like an offensive choice, and this is kind of a defensive choice. And I'm not sure which is the right call when playing skinks. So I like where we're at with the skink upgrades here. And So I guess if I had to cut one of these two, I'm saying it would be Dark Humor. We'll find out how wrong I am about that later. And then do I cut Menacing Posture as well is dependent on if I get to keep Unveiled Ambitions. So let's take a look. So for sure we're keeping Burst from the Shadows and Huanchi's devices. These are friendly and enemy pushes respectively. Light of the Stars is a reaction that could prevent Gambit damage. At this time, I think, especially in the meta, this is particularly good. Now, the clutch, or like the prerequisite here, though, is drawing it at the same time as they do, right? So if they're going to deal damage to you with a Gambit, are you drawing this in time? Or are you forced to hold this from round to round? So this could be a very awkward card in this deck. And we'll see how that feels. I think depending on what matchup we're against is going to be whether or not we value holding it over a round, or we deal with the fact that we didn't find a good use for it in the round that we drew it, and we get rid of it. I do want to test it, so I'm going to try to keep it in the deck. Lords of Space and Time, for sure keeping. Sotex Venom. I think I even like this more than Light of the Stars as like a reaction on demand. I really like that it's not range restricted. So try to keep that in, which means we're looking at 3 asterisms across our 14 Gambits. So we're going to cut 2 of those for sure, maybe even all 3. Hooded Rush is great. Massborn is probably an argument for keeping 5 instead of 4. Not sure though. Yes and no. Possessive Crouch can really boost our defense up. I think Possessive Crouch has to stay, especially since I got rid of our defensive reroll over there. Revealed Aspect taking over Unveiled Ambitions. Okay, so I'm having a hard time keeping Unveiled Ambitions because I have 14 slots. So I think in this build, do I have to get rid of Menacing Posture? Unfeeling Resilience. I feel like that also combos well with Envy Shroud being in here. So right now I'm considering cutting all three asterisms. And I'm going to do it. We're going to cut all 3 asterisms. And then Unveiled Ambitions versus Menacing Posture is kind of what's going on right now. Like, I think I value Menacing Posture quite a bit. And so I want to keep it and get rid of something like Eternal Smile. Yeah, I think I want to get rid of Eternal Smile and keep Unveiled Ambitions. So then if I do that, what do I have to get rid of? I don't want to get rid of Massborn. So Massborn and Light of the Stars are both feeling very niche right now. And so that's an argument to cut them. But I really want to try them. I want to test with them. So let's look over at our objectives. Maybe that'll help clear this up. So we have Astro Matrix Alignment. And I think we have plenty to help support that. Lords of Space and Time can on its own kind of really help support that. We've got Possessive Crouch to shore up the defense of somebody that is in that position and delves. Technically, we have Kikitaka as well. We could position him forward and just flip with his action, and action is definitely worth a Seed Glory. So this should be good. Instinctive Tactics, great. So I think Death Visage... No, not Death Visage. I think Vision's Feast of Violence. Got it in 3. Feast of Violence will be what we weed out, I think the range 1 and range 2 attack requirements here are going to pull way too hard at our activations, at what we're trying to do, and I don't think it's worth it. So I think we just kind of live in a world where unfortunately we have 2 duels, and we need to see those duels before we see the great plan. So let's see. I would prefer to have 3, don't get me wrong, but because our duels are both end phases as well, so it would have been nice to have had a dual surge. But we have Children of Azir and Totally Overpowered. So we will need to keep both of those. We will need to consider Totally Overpowered as we continue to consider what's going on over in Gambits and upgrades, because we need to make sure that we can score this card. Which I think, again, helps weed out, like, we're going to have to use range 3 attacks to help make Totally Overpowered happen, and we don't want those range 3 attacks not rewarding Visions of, or Feast of Violence, if that had stuck around. So we want the freedom to, without seeing Totally Overpowered, start working towards it when we have our surges, and then see it come up and still feel like we can make it happen. I might find that maybe Feast of Violence wasn't going to be so hard, but I think it was going to be quite difficult. Balance the cosmic equation. So we have, let's see. So that's a hybrid. Let's see. Jules, the End of Empires. Hey, I've been listening to your podcast for a long time now, but never tried Underworlds. So sadly, this makes it got cut off. There we go. So sadly, this makes little sense to me right now, but happy to catch your live stream. Thanks for tuning in, Jules. That's awesome. That you'd be checking out our podcast without having played Underworlds. Oh, maybe Story Phase, or maybe another More Realms episode. But very, very happy that you're able to catch the stream, and that you wanted to shout something real quick, and that you listened to us, even if you haven't started playing Underworlds. It's a great game. I can't recommend it strongly enough. It hits all the boxes for me. Is a low model count, so I don't have to paint much, and you kind of get like a personal attachment to like these storied squads that I think are really cool. But mechanically, the game is just so deep. Being able to tailor your cards, which is what we're doing here. So you get to tailor your game plan as well as tailor your tricks on how you're going to succeed, and then you get to bring that storied warband full of character to the board, and it starts right away with the amount of depth in decision from round 1 all the way through round 3. And you can play a game in under an hour, so hits a lot of boxes for me. Oh yeah, sorry, I meant the Mortal Realms and Story Phase. But you guys are one of the most interesting Warhammer lore podcasts to listen to. Well, thank you for that. I will absolutely be passing that on to the rest of the crew. So we have a couple more objectives to cut. We're up against the wire. I have to eject by 2 o'clock. So what can we do here? Let's see. We need to get rid of... So we need Totally Overpowered. I think there's a way. Yeah. So this chain here means dual. This swap arrows means hybrid. So we don't really want to get rid of these 5 cards, right? Because these are all supporting the Great Plan. So what we're really looking at is Will of the Slum, Hooded Stranger, and Stoic Appearance. So if we consider Hooded Stranger to be a value of 2 instead of 1, because it can flex into that 2, and it's pretty easy to do so, then we can compare it to Will of the Slan, and we can probably just get rid of Stoic Appearance right out of the gate. It's easy, don't get me wrong, but we're also doing really good in the hybrid territory, so we might be able to get rid of this over here. There are 2 or more enemy fighters out of action, or your warband holds more objectives than any other warband. So what's the other one? Seeking the Heart. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter is in enemy territory, or your warband holds each objective in enemy territory. Here we go. So let's actually get rid of Seeking the Heart. That does reduce our glory count. but I think that's okay. We were going to be comparing two two glory end phases anyways. Score this in end phase if your warband holds one or more objectives in two or more players' territories. I think that's better than what we were going for if we had kept the other one, where it's all of our surviving fighters, or what was it, 3? I cut quick. So we're looking at end phase, and that was hybrid, seeking the heart. Each surviving friendly fighter is in enemy territory. Yep. Or your warband holds each objective in enemy territory. That hold each might be hard. Each surviving might just fall into our lap, but that's going to be a late. And I kind of don't want to have to force ourselves into those weird spots if we can prevent it, or wait on it to help us score. So instead, let's have Will of the Slan. That's only requiring us to hold one specific spot in enemy territory with one fighter. Yes, it's not a duel or a hybrid, but as far as hybrids go, I think we're good. We've got Balance the Cosmic Equation. We got as well as 3 surges. So we're doing really good in that department. We have 4 contributing to that. Way better than the 2 duel that we have. So then it comes down to Hooded Stranger or Stoke Appearance. And I'm personally a fan of trying out Hooded Stranger here. So that gives us a glory floor of 17 with Hooded Stranger being 18. If we're able to score our deck. So that's before like bounties or other things that would reward us glory. And with that, let's take a look at what we're going to cut from Gambits then. Unveiled Ambitions also helps score Children of Azir, and surviving friendly fighters have 3 or more upgrades. So I think that's actually a really good argument for Unveiled Ambitions, is it turns this slot into an upgrade. Revealed Aspect almost lives in the same space, but we can really make Children of Azir more reliable with the inclusion of Unveiled Ambitions. So let's go ahead and get rid of Eternal Smile. So we're getting rid of that +1 damage on range 1, range 2. Range 1, range 2, right? Hitting the chop card a little fast. Yeah, range 1, range 2. Okay. So let's do that. And then that means we have one more card from here we need to get rid of. I don't want it to be Revealed Aspect, but maybe it is. I can't say I've ever run a mass deck without this card because of how much it can offer. But we've got so many good choices in here. I guess we've talked before how Light of the Stars is an awkward one and Masks Born is an awkward one. But again, I want to try both. So play this during your friendly fighter's attack action. After the deal damage step, give the target 1 move token. I'm not getting rid of that. I'm not getting rid of this, so let's get rid of Light of the Stars. I didn't want to. But Light of the Stars is what we're going to cut. We're going to try without it. I think it would be pretty spicy to pull off, and maybe that's a good card to bring into the field report, right? So you'll hear from me next week. Did I regret not having that snap ability to turn off damage from a Gambit? We'll see. And maybe something will kind of highlight itself as really not as useful as I thought, and we're able to slip that in and test in version 2. So we've rounded out the deck. We need a good name. Ooh, what do we have for a good name here? So they're Malevolent Masks. We're the Starblood Stalkers. We're Dinosaurs. Holden Objectives. Wearing Demonic Possessed Masks. Starblood. I love Starblood. It's such a good like part of their name already. There's something to like the galactic essence that comes with the dinosaurs here. That it's like part of their blood. It's part of them. And let's see. Any suggestions from chat here? Any good names? I am I'm struggling to grab a good name out of the air here. We did lean into the Great Plan. We're not going to call it the Great Mass Plan. Let's see. Starblood, Stalkers. Stalkers, it feels like there's something there. Possessed Stalkers. Yeah. We can call it Possessed Stalkers. Unless we have something better. Demonic Stalkers. Malevolent Blood Masks. Malevolent Blood Masks. Malevolent Blood. I think blood feels weird as a descriptor for the warband when it doesn't have star next to it, because it blood doesn't really summon order or dinosaurs to mind, to the Seraphon to mind. I guess, could we go with Seraphon? Could that enter in here? The Malevolent Seraphon? Nah. Let's see. Starblood. Lords of Space and Time. Ooh. What if we use that? Lords of Space and Time. Lords of... Lords of... There's something there. Lords of Aspect. Lords of... Okay. It's going to be that for sure. Lords of something. Lords of... Space and Envy. Space and Masks. Space and Malevolence. That's a mouthful. Lords of Ambition. Lords of Unveiled Ambitions. Lords of... Okay. Well, let's see. New deck. Lords of... The Great Plan. Taking over. Revealed Aspect. Lords of Aspect. Hex Warped Lords. The Hex Warped Lords. Ooh, the fact that they're Hex Masks. The Hexen. Yeah, what are they called? The Hexen... The Hexen Curse, I think. Something like that. The Hexen Masks. There isn't a plot card or like a story card listed here for us to take a look at. In fact, my ability to view cards just broke. I think Hexes fits in here. Lords of Space and Hexes. Lords of... or the Hex Blood. Ooh, there we go. Hex Blood Stalkers. Done. Nailed it. All right. The Hex Blood Stalkers. On to the next. So, we have a good name. And thank you for the help there, Kaylin and Jules. And let's wrap the show up. So I want to give one more thanks again to Travisor. By the way, it's not lost on me that dinosaur is like spliced into your name there. So thanks again to Travisor for requesting Starblood Stalkers. If you too would like to request a build or have a deck list you'd like reviewed on the show, let me know. Submissions help make the show what it is. And it's delightful. Like, the never knowing what I'm going to be tackling on the show, having it brought to me by others has me exploring more aspects of the game, and I think it keeps the energy up, it keeps the intrigue up. It really is what makes this show come together. So if you have anything that you'd like, again, just drop me a message. So like next week is going to be week B. That's going to be an experimental week. So in that experimental week so far, we've explored deck deconstruction, where I bring in a deck that I know really well, and I deconstruct for you why it works. We've explored Deck Doctor, which is where you send in a deck that you would like me to review blind on the show. We try to establish what its game plan is. So I try to analyze what you sent and see what's the game plan here, see what its strengths are, what its weaknesses are, where it might struggle, and where I might be able to make recommendations. and really strengthen that game plan that you sent in. So if you would like to submit, it could be for next week. I don't have anything lined up. So if you have a list that you'd like reviewed, it could be as early as next week that I get you on the show. In the meantime, between now and when I see you next, I'll be giving this deck a test drive at my local meetup, and we'll report back on what did and didn't work at the top of the show in 2 weeks when we get back to week A. You should try it too. You should try this deck out. I always love when people dive into the decks that are built here on the show. Being able to compare notes and have a lively discussion is an absolute blast. So you can see this deck list if you want to try it out, and many more at the Battle Mallets Nemesis library. You can best reach me in the comments below or on the Mortal Realms Discord. You can check out all the Mortal Realms Network has to offer, including a link to our Discord at themortalrealms.com. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next week. I've been Skylar, and this has been What the Decks.